Okay, so good afternoon. We'll get going in just a second. I'm not sure that I'm live. Oh, I am. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so good afternoon. We just got word that we're going to get a verdict in this trial at 4:30. So we do want to talk about that a little bit today. I've watched some of it. I'm sure many of you did as well. Good afternoon. Yeah, between 4:30 and 5. So, there's three different outcomes. Well, there's four different outcomes, really. And those outcomes are, I'm watching the market at the same time, which was just a disaster today. It's been a disaster the last couple days. So to go to this trial, and I'm going to look this up till I have the exact potential Chauvin trial. There are three different charges, and then there's also not guilty. I'd be shocked if we got a not guilty. The charges: second-degree murder. The most severe charge he faces is second-degree murder. In order to convict him on this charge, the jury has to find he was committing third-degree assault causing serious bodily harm, meaning he significantly injured Floyd when he caused his death. Conviction on this charge does not require that Chauvin intended to kill Floyd. The maximum sentence is 40 years in prison. The second option is third-degree murder. The middle charge in terms of severity requires a prosecution prove that Chauvin killed Floyd by perpetrating an act eminently dangerous to others and evincing a depraved mind without regard for human life in order to convict him. Second-degree manslaughter requires the prosecutor to prove that Chauvin's negligent actions created an unreasonable risk of death or bodily harm. The maximum sentence is 10 years. So second-degree manslaughter seems fairly easy. Third-degree murder, clearly an act eminently dangerous to others. Evincing a depraved mind, I don't know if you get there. And second-degree murder, yeah, I don't know. Does anybody have predictions on this? What do you think? I can't see. I'm feeling guilty manslaughter. I can't see a not guilty, right? Does anybody think he's getting not guilty? I can't see that. I'd be shocked. I think also that plays a role in this. The jurors know what's happened in other not guilty verdicts. Let's not pretend that shouldn't be fair, but that's clearly in people's minds. First of all, holy God, Netflix is tanking the stock. Must have had a terrible earnings report or missed. Secondary is tough to get without a reasonable doubt. And I think the third one seems reasonable. Third-degree murder. I'm sorry, second-degree manslaughter seems like that's a no-brainer. The maximum sentence is 10 years. They'll probably get that. Then you go to 25 years or 40 years. Wow. And he could be not guilty of all those charges. If he's acquitted of, you cannot appeal an acquittal and you cannot retry after an acquittal. So if he's not guilty, it's just the end of it. So in any event, this is going to be crazy. And so at 4:30, if we'll watch, if it's live, we'll talk about it. If it's a little closer to 5, we won't be live for it, but we'll talk about it and we'll post some things on it today. But could be just a massive moment. I will tell you, I remember talking about this the day it happened. At first, I had heard about it. I didn't see the video. When you saw the video, it was just shocking. Primarily because there are people standing there saying, "You're killing him. You are killing him. Stop. What are you doing?" And he just refused to listen. And he looks up, one hand was in his pocket, it looked like. It was this feeling of absolute indifference, of I don't care.
Afternoon.
And then,
good afternoon.
I got the video from another thing we'll talk about in a second.
It's to stand here before all of you all
on the Home Depot issue. We'll talk about that in a second. So we'll talk about that if we get to that point. The two things I wanted to talk about in more detail today. Yesterday, Governor Lamont put out a press release basically saying on the 30th, I'll read this in a little more detail. Effective May 1st, bars that do not serve food can open for service on an outdoor-only basis. So bars can reopen just outside. There's some limits to inside that are removed. Now, the Restaurant Association and a ton of media outlets put out that at May 19th, all the rules are gone. And I saw those. I had a bunch of restaurant owners call me and say, wow, this is great. What do we do? Because I consult with a bunch of local restaurants. And I said, that's not the press release I got. I'm going to read you the press release I got from Lamont. Then you tell me how you would read this or read into this. So this is what it says. Effective May 19th, 2021, contingent upon sufficiently low rates of infections and increasing vaccination rates, all remaining business restrictions will be lifted, period. Then, the Department of Public Health will issue recommendations for indoor and other large outdoor events, such as concerts, as well as clarify where masking will continue after May 19th. So, one, there's a big contingent there, and that's that the numbers are good. Two, additional recommendations will be coming from the Department of Public Health for indoor events. Well, what's an indoor event? Is live music an indoor event? Large groups, birthday parties, things like that, are those indoor events? And outdoor events. So no, not everything will be lifted. We still need masks, and we are waiting for the Department of Public Health to make more recommendations as to what you can or cannot do. I think everybody got a little bit too excited. It'd be nice if everything's back to normal. That plexiglass between, on top of bars and talking through, like you're in prison, may be down, but there will still be some limitations on what you can do. And we will still likely have to wear masks inside. So I think a lot of the articles that I saw and a lot of the questions I got were basically saying, well, we're back to normal on May 19th. I don't think that's really the case based on what Lamont put out in his press release. Just something to keep in mind. Some of these comments, I'm sorry I didn't see these before. Ryan Noble, second is easy. Did he follow procedure? No. Then he committed an assault. A person died while he was committing an assault, felony murder. Emily, excited isn't exactly the word I'd use. Definitely more so concerned. Are you talking about the restaurants reopening? Renee, second degree is tough to get to beyond a reasonable doubt. I agree. I keep coming back to, I want to pull this up repeatedly. I forgot what the charges were. But I come back to that third charge. I think that's probably the easiest, and I think that will be where the jury ends up with. Life without parole, 40 years is the most he can get. So I think that manslaughter charge probably makes the most sense and probably what we're looking at. I cannot fathom a situation where they say not guilty. It would just be, and it's whether it's fair or not, there is no way you're not, as a juror, have in your mind the impact of previous not guilties, the riots and the devastation that happened after those in the past. That is absolutely going to be in people's mind. Emily, yes. You're still concerned. I think there are people who are concerned with the amount of vaccinations that are happening, and they're rising quickly. Oh, I'm sorry. I should have said this earlier. The town of Brantford, if you're in the local area, sent out a press release. We'll post this. There are a limited number of appointments available for tomorrow, Wednesday, April 21st, at the community house located at 46 Church Street. If you need an appointment for your vaccine tomorrow, you can go to the Brantford Community House. That's a brand new building. The number is 203-315-0685. That's the COVID hotline for Brantford, 203-315-0685. Okay. I want to get to the issue that has been kind of on my mind all day, and that is this idea of boycotting. Now, Georgia passed a law that I think is pretty messed up. It seems very much a reaction by the Republican-controlled government in Georgia to losing not just the presidential election in that state, but also the special election afterwards, which may have been the most expensive single state election in history. And they passed a law that, doesn't come out and say black people can't vote, but it certainly takes steps to make it harder for people to vote in inner cities. So that may not be black people, but it's people who are likely left-leaning voters in inner cities. That's the way it's been throughout the country. Inner cities typically go left. Pretty standard. They took steps to make it harder to do that. Some of the other steps you can complain about, but they're not that much different than Connecticut. Getting a million telemarketer calls. So Coca-Cola came out and was part of a discussion group and came out against the law. And a couple other companies came out against the law. And the first thing I'm going to say about companies that come out against laws is nobody does it because of moral reasons. This belief that someone at Coca-Cola said, we have to take a stand here, we have to stand up for something, is nonsense. Here's what actually happens. They go in a room with a bunch of advisors and a bunch of counselors and a bunch of attorneys, and they say, how do we use this situation to our advantage? That's what they do. This is not about, who is the person who was the chief of staff for Obama, who became mayor in Chicago, who said, you never let a tragedy go to waste. You never let a difficult situation go to waste politically. That's what these corporations are doing. It is not some moral stance. So today, and there's a few different narratives here. The headline is Group Calls for Boycott of Home Depot over Georgia's new voting law. Now, a few issues and we'll talk about them. One, who is this group? An outspoken group of Georgia's faith-based leaders are calling on a boycott of Home Depot. So, if you are of the Jeffersonian belief of separation of church and state, and that's where this comes from, it comes from his letters, you have an issue here. And you have and anybody can call for a boycott of anything. But for a faith-based group to say, we want a boycott of a company, not for how they stand on the Georgia law, but for not taking a stand on the Georgia law. They didn't come out for it. They didn't come out against it. But because they didn't come out and do what this group wanted them to do, they say we want to boycott them. Now, am I worried about Home Depot? No, not really. That's kind of crazy. But I did just a little bit of the last time there was a boycott of Home Depot called. And I'm going to look it up now just because I don't remember. What was the name? Bernie something, the guy who owned or founded Home Depot, donated to Trump in 2019. And, July 10th, 2019. And boycott by many groups. They were calling because Bernie Marcus, who was a founder, also owns the Atlanta Falcons, donated to Trump. They called on a boycott of Home Depot. That was July 10th, 2019. Now I'm going to look up Home Depot stock. Home Depot stock from July of 2019 was about 203.65, and it is now 323.96. So you can call for a boycott. I'm not crying for Home Depot because the boycott clearly didn't do anything, and the up $120 on, which was about 203. So it's up about 55, 60% since that time that last boycott was called. So I'm not worried about Home Depot or the functionality of it. The second aspect of this is when you call for a boycott of a company, you're hoping their sales go down, they have a financial impact. That costs jobs. So by calling for a boycott of a company because they didn't take the stand you wanted on a political issue, you're basically saying you should fire people. It's idiotic and it's stupid. So we have religious groups who don't really care about separation of church and state. And by the way, that's not a law. It's not a law. Churches all over the planet take stands on political issues. I don't think they should. I'm not a religion guy. But they're doing it. Two, they don't work. We've tried this before. It's nonsense. 3, you're trying to punish them for staying out of it. You're not punishing them for a stance. People went after Chick-fil-A because they donated to a cause in California about gay marriage. Now, I don't mix the two. I like Chick-fil-A. I enjoy Chick-fil-A. It's great stuff. And never cared about where their politics goes to. I don't buy a store or not go to a store based on the owner's political beliefs, as much as I may disagree with them. I don't go to a store and not go to a store based on their religion, as much as I may disagree with them. I think it's nonsense. But at the end of the day, is this really where we want to be as a country? Where groups of people can start rallies against businesses, against jobs, against other people's welfare, not just because you don't like the stance they've taken, but because they don't take a stance. How far are we going to go? Where does it end? At what point does somebody doesn't like what I say, so therefore I'll never work with that person again? I don't like this restaurant, so I won't go there again. The passion that people have for politics, we also have to have the exact same amount of passion for not letting our politics influence every other aspect of our life. We have reached a point where I have seen people, for reasons solely on who they voted for, not want to talk to people who voted for Trump, not want to talk to people who voted for Biden, break up relationships, break up families, try to destroy other people based on their political beliefs and their votes. Guys, it's nonsense. You know who lost the right to vote in those Georgia laws? You know who lost the right to vote? Nobody. It's a little harder for some. Yes, it's political. Democrats play the same game. They may have changed voting laws. They've changed redistricting has happened in certain ways to make certain people win certain things. There's a debate that happens all the time to try to get one district to vote a different way. The losing team always tries to change the rules to make sure they can win. It's not uncommon. It happens constantly. Georgia's law, is it a stupid law? Yeah, I think so. Was it a necessary law? No. It was clearly a reaction to losing by the Republicans, but it's not taking anybody's right to vote away. The world's not coming to an end. And to respond with that, to have religious leaders, Christians, the guy who turned over those tables in the temple, the guy who said, my kingdom is no part of this world, that guy, the guy who wandered the countryside, didn't have a place to lay his head, that guy, Christ, Christians. I want people to lose their job because I don't like the way the corporation didn't take a stand that agrees with me. We won't fix this until there are people just as passionate about calling out that bullshit as they are about politics in general. It doesn't work. It's never worked. And if you want to wonder if it's ever worked, the boycotts called for Chick-fil-A. Drive to North Haven and look at Chick-fil-A. It's one of the most amazing operations you've ever seen if you've ever seen their drive-thru. It's spectacular. 2 rows, people working it, they fly through. I don't know how they don't get 15 trucks load of chicken there every single day. I have no idea. It's spectacular. Boycotts don't work. It's just attention getting. It's nonsense. But at least in that case, you were boycotting them because of an action the company owners took. Something they did. They donated to or supported a cause in California. That makes sense. I don't agree with it, going after them that way. But they did something definitive. This keeps going off for me, so I'm going to just delete this. Home Depot literally said, we're not getting involved. We support everybody's right to vote, and we're not getting involved. And religious leaders, with apparently nothing else to do, decided to let's all get together. It would be the Christ-like thing to boycott a company and cost people jobs. You're not going to cost those executives any jobs. They're paid based on the stock price. It's through the roof. Who are you going to hurt? You're going to hurt the people, the rank and file members of all races. It's nonsensical. It's stupid. Now, is this cancel culture? In many ways, it is. Anything I don't like, I get to cancel. The question for me is, how are religious leaders the leaders of this? The people we're supposed to keep a line between, the people who have a tax break, don't have to pay taxes on their property. And these religious leaders live amazing lives, amazing property, amazing salaries, amazing homes. They get to come out and have a press conference and say, let's cost jobs at Home Depot because we don't like that they didn't take a stand. I'm as for gay rights as you can possibly get. My sister's gay, used to it, have many, many friends, been to many, many gay bars, many gay parties, don't give a shit. They're the best places to go. They're so much fun. Do I care that Chick-fil-A donated to something? Don't give a shit. Their chicken's good. Do I care that the home goods people wouldn't pay for something? Yes, I care. I think it's stupid. I think they should offer those pregnancy rights to their employees. Am I going to not go there? The reason I don't go to Home Goods has nothing to do with their political beliefs. I don't go to Home Goods because I don't want their crap. At the end of the day, religious leaders get to stand in front of a TV and say, we want to hurt other people's jobs because this company didn't take a stand that we agree with. The company didn't take any stand at all. At some point, it's just messed up. And it's funny, it never really works. You know, I as a kid, in the car, and the Sports Radio 66 used to have Don Imus in the morning. So every time I got in the car, I worked for a cabinet maker. Then we would go do installs or what have you, and it was on. So we actually didn't care about Don Imus that much. By 9 o'clock, it was all sports radio. That's what I cared about. Big Knicks fan, Giants fan. But Don Imus was on, and he was entertaining. And he gave that nappy-headed hose quote about I believe the Rutgers basketball team. Inappropriate, no question. And he was immediately fired. Not immediately, but soon after CBS fired him. Now, the goal would be to end his career. It didn't end his career. He got a job somewhere else. The other side of that is that was somebody who had given a lot of money to a lot of different causes. He started the Imus Ranch. He did a lot of very, very good things for humanity, for people in need. Was it appropriate what he said? No. Did it make sense that they go after his job? No, because he got another job in a second. The corporation isn't taking a moral stand. Coca-Cola going down there against the Georgia law wasn't taking a moral stand. Coca-Cola was saying, what helps our brand? What helps our business? Home Depot didn't take a stand because they didn't want to get involved. They decided it would help our business to not get involved. Corporations are not making political points. They don't care. Don Imus got rehired because he's going to make somebody money. And his group of black church leaders down there who are calling on a boycott for Home Depot just want to get in front of and push their own brand, get in front of the camera and push their own brand. It is tiring that we see people yelling and screaming about political stances, that we see people, awful debates on social media over political stances, often by people who don't even fully understand what they're talking about. In the last month alone, I have known families that won't talk to each other because of political stances. We've reached crazy. And if we're going to start being passionate about something, it's always about we're passionate about politics, we're passionate about causes. Well, the cause we need to be passionate about is not letting this shit divide us. It's not letting politics decide where we go shopping or what family members we talk to. That our response on a social media post is, can you explain that more? Or why do you really feel that way, as opposed to you're an idiot or a jerk, you're clueless or a moron. I posted today on something like this, and I said, it's not going to make any difference to Home Depot's bottom line. I got called more names than you could possibly imagine. It's just a factual sentence. Home Depot stock will be up. Morgan Stanley didn't downgrade Home Depot based on a group of people saying boycott it. Didn't happen. It's delusion. It's all a fake world. It's not real. It's Harry Potter and Hogwarts or Narnia or whatever, this world where people are so passionate and strong. And corporations are taking moral stances. No corporations are taking moral stances. They're taking business stances. Trust me, I've been in these meetings. They sit in rooms and we sit down and say, what's the pros and cons of this? If we say yes, we're for this. If we say no, we're against it. If we say nothing, what are the pros and cons? And we write on giant whiteboards in marker, here are the pros and cons of this, and we do what we vote on. Has nothing to do with a moral stance. Oh, thank God Coca-Cola stood up for us. At the end of the day, that law is not changing much. But to the people promoting it, it's the end of the world. The world's coming to an end. And it's happening every day and more often. I don't care what Home Depot thinks about a Georgia voting law. I don't care what Chick-fil-A donates money to. I just don't. And you know what? We never ask the question unless we find out the information otherwise, right? We never decide, you know what? I'm going to go buy a Nissan, but let me find out the religious orientation or the sexual orientation or the political affiliation of the CEO. We never do that. I want to stop at TJ Maxx. I wonder if the vice president is a Republican or Democrat. Did we ever do that? Did anybody say even a month ago when the Georgia law passed, man, I need to boycott Home Depot? No, they waited for the leaders to tell them to boycott Home Depot. Don't even think for ourselves anymore. So if we're not going to actively even look at these things, I have a Hewlett-Packard computer. Is the CEO Republican or Democrat? I don't know. My TV is LG. I don't know if we're not asking this stuff. So why would we let somebody else tell us that we should or shouldn't shop somewhere because of a political belief of that party? It's absurd. It's crazy. All right. Before we leave, I'm going to go to. All right. So. I'm reading the Chauvin coverage. I don't know if they're going to go live yet or not. They're live on the Seal.
12 and a half years in prison for either the charge of murder 2 or murder 3 if he's convicted. Keep in mind, we don't know whether Derek Chauvin is convicted on any of these counts. It is certainly possible that the jury reached an unanimous decision that he is not guilty on all 3 counts.
What are the odds of that?
If that is the case, Derek Chauvin.
What are the odds that Chauvin is not guilty on all counts? 4:30. Yeah, Lorena, I'm watching it now. I want to make sure we have it live. I'm on CNBC, but they'll all have it live the same. I think it's 0. I would be absolutely shocked.
Whether the defense decides to make any statements remains to be seen. I can tell you this. The defense attorneys have already made clear that they will seek an appeal if their client is guilty.
Well, no kidding.
On some of these counts. You wonder about the manslaughter charge, but certainly if he's found guilty on either of them.
So the manslaughter charge is 10 years. The maximum is 10 years for the manslaughter charge. Let me pull this up before I speak out of turn. If we don't get this, second-degree murder. Second-degree murder is 40 years. Third-degree murder is 25 years. And third degree, the definition, killed Floyd by perpetrating an act eminently dangerous to others and evincing a depraved mind without regard for human life. You know, the issue I have there is when you have people literally telling you he can't breathe, he's dying, you're killing him, and you refuse to move. This idea of regard or without regard for human life kind of rings there. Evincing a depraved mind? I don't know. And the second-degree manslaughter proved that his actions created unreasonable risk of death and great bodily harm. I am guessing they'll come up with second-degree manslaughter. And the reason is, if you're a jury, one, there is the overwhelming fact that you have other post not guilty verdict outcomes in your mind, right? You know what's going to happen if this person's not guilty. If you can't quite rise to third-degree murder, or even if you can, I think what you'll end up saying is, here's a happy medium. So there might be a difference in the jury on what the charge is, I think the happy medium will be second-degree manslaughter, and I would imagine the judge would give him 10 years. But then you'd have him out. How old is he? How old is Chauvin? 45 years old. So at 55 years old, he'd be out. Ooh. Wow. In my opinion, I think, Anthony, there will be riots no matter what the verdict is. I hope not. Yeah, I don't know. Mary, I'm in agreement with you. Second-degree manslaughter. Now, the question becomes, will there be riots if it's still second-degree manslaughter? If he gets only 10 years, and he won't be sentenced today, but only 10 years, he had a look of stupidity on his face. I thought the video was awful. I don't know how you look at that video and see anything but murder, primarily because you had people standing there videotaping you, saying he can't breathe. I don't know. I don't know how you ignore that. If I was the person making a decision, I think I'd have to go with that second one. The bouquet of humanity is every one of them. Everyone one of is everyone one of every one of them. Okay, not sure what that means, but okay. Lorena, where is that from? Chauvin's 45. Chauvin charges. I'm trying to find more about this second one. You know, how do you... So New York Post has a law professor writing on this. The 40 years, the top charge, felony murder, based on the idea that Chauvin intentionally committed an assault which unintentionally caused Floyd's death. Can we look at this as an assault? I don't think so. I don't certainly unintentionally caused Floyd's death. I don't think he intentionally caused it, but I don't think it was an act that you would consider. I mean, he was the initial act. He was fighting, then he stopped, right? So I don't know if the top charge can be appropriate. Third-degree murder rap alleges Chauvin acted with depraved indifference to human life based on the idea that some conduct is so inherently dangerous it will be treated as an equivalent of murder. I got to tell you, if it was my vote, I think I would be there. I think this idea of putting a knee in your leg on someone's neck for at all, but especially a prolonged amount of time, seems, I don't know how that's not inherently dangerous. The law school hypothetical is opening a lion's cage at the zoo. You do not intend to have the lion eat Sally, but, you know, did he intend to kill this person? No. Did he make use of something that was clearly absurd? Yeah. Final charge, second-degree manslaughter, alleges Chauvin acted with culpable negligence, which created an unreasonable risk of death for which he faced a maximum 10 years. The maximum sound worse than they are. For example, if Chauvin was convicted of only manslaughter, he could be out in 2.5 years with good behavior. Wow. Oh, Blackwell, okay. Anthony, there is some kind of hearing if he is found guilty where the judge can give him more time. Chauvin made the decision the day of closing arguments. All right, I don't know that. I'm going to have to look that up. It was not that he was alone, Volker. He had other cops there. There was less of a risk of someone saying, "You're hurting me, I can't breathe," to get an advantage and overwhelm the cop. Yeah, I agree. I listen, he was clearly subdued. I mean, I don't see how you can look at anything. Justin, you don't just put him in the car. No reason in this world why he couldn't just put him in the car. Well, he was down. I mean, he couldn't. He was down, and his hands were behind his back. He was handcuffed. I mean, there was nothing he can do. He wasn't going to get away. So when you have, even if you are unintentionally, like, what's the reaction? If you're playing with someone, your horse playing with a relative, I used to do with my brother sometimes, or something like that, and someone says to you, "Oh, no, you're hurting him. Oh, well, he can't breathe." The first thing you do is you back off a little bit. You're like, "Hold on, let me check." I didn't see that. This guy had a knee on a neck. The people are saying he can't breathe. He didn't say, "Let me check. Let me look." Didn't tell one of the other officers, "Hey, take a look on the other side. Is he breathing?" When you start asking for your mother and you're handcuffed, you're already locked. You're not worried about this person getting away. I don't know how. I don't see how not guilty can happen. That's the Blackwell hearing? Okay, I don't know what is the Blackwell hearing. Let's look that up. I'll look up Blackwell hearing Chauvin. Oh, Blackwell is a lawyer. Okay.
There in Minneapolis. So Derek Chauvin and presumably his legal counsel.
All right, we'll wait here a second.
The jury would be, under normal circumstances, the jury would be brought back in the very last minute, and then the proceedings would begin. We don't anticipate that once this gets going, it will take very long. They'll go through each of the counts separately, and then we'll know.
So Chauvin's in the courtroom. The jury is not there yet, apparently. A bouquet of, okay, thank you, Lorena. I watched snippets of it. So, right, he was in the car. They took him out because he was hopping around, usually because the person might hurt themselves, which is even worse, because if you thought someone was capable of hurting themselves, a knee on the neck is not what you want to do. The question would be, Jack Orphan, if the prosecution convinced the jury beyond a reasonable doubt, without watching all the testimony or listening to the testimony person, I can't say, yeah, I don't know either. I can't see, based on the points that were made, that would be the case. But
they found him not guilty on all counts. All of these items are possible, and he or she who says they know exactly how this is going to go is not one to whom we're going to pay much of any attention. Let's bring in our legal eagles now. David Henderson is with us.
I'd like to just get it. We're supposed to get it before 4.
In addition, Arthur Idala, former prosecutor, current criminal defense attorney, and friend of the program. Thank you both. David, you've been saying.
Okay, so make your picks. What is it here? You have.
You didn't think either side really was very effective in closing arguments. How do you feel in this?
You have second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and then second-degree manslaughter. I'm thinking that manslaughter charge. Second-degree manslaughter is what he gets.
Normally, quick verdicts favor the prosecution. In addition to that, the jury didn't.
I watched the whole video that showed at the trial. It was worse than what you see on the news. I didn't see an additional one from the trial, but I saw the one that was all over the news.
It's hard to anticipate incident footage.
Arthur Idala, your thoughts on that?
Well, I would normally agree 100%, except Shepard, when we were much younger, there was a big case of.
All right, so I'm not going to stay on because we don't know if this is going to be in 2 minutes or 20 minutes. But certainly we'll talk about this tomorrow. We'll post the outcome on Brantford 7. We can talk about it in the comment section from there.
There wasn't one question asked.
You're right.
The defendant would have had been present, so we would have.
But I cannot see a situation where he doesn't get anything. I can't see not guilty on anything. But, okay, guys, I'm going to let it go there. $10 on not guilty. Those odds would be what, like 100 to 1? I just can't see that happening. We'll post on Brantford 7 and the Steve Mazikane Podcast Facebook page if you want to have a discussion. If you're not following the Steve Mazikane Podcast Facebook page, please do, because at some point that's where the video will be. The podcast will be every day. Until then, we'll be back on tomorrow at 4 o'clock and obviously talk about this and whatever the aftermath is. Let's hope for a peaceful aftermath no matter what the verdict is. But we will see. So, guys, have a great night. I will see you tomorrow at 4 o'clock. I hope you get out. Well, I hope we have a good verdict. I don't mean a good verdict. There is no good verdict, but I hope there's not
Considering if whether he died,
I hope there's not damage afterwards.
and what Derek Chauvin did
$10.
facilitate that death.
All right, guys, have a good night. I will be back tomorrow. We'll talk more about this trial. Any questions, comments, what have you, send them in. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 4 o'clock.